Here's the thing, if you come to Spain and you come to a traditional Spanish bar like this one and you order a cup of black coffee and you take a sip, you're gonna think to yourself, why does it taste like bitterness, burnt rubber, and fire and brimstone? Well, that's what today's video is about. Venga, let's go. Hey Spain lovers, I'm James Blick and welcome to Spain Revealed. This channel is all about helping you explore and experience Spain like a local, both the good and the not so good. And guys, the time has come to talk about Spanish coffee. Look, I love traditional Spanish bars, the busyness, the craziness, the rustic food, the rustic wine, the often gruff service. But when it comes to the coffee, my love can often kind of dry up. Because when I get to the end of a menu del dia and it's time for coffee, often I just won't order it. Because often it's like this stuff. It's kind of black, it's dark, it's acrid, it kind of tastes bitter, it kind of tastes a bit like the apocalypse. Now, it varies from bar to bar, but it can be pretty rough. And that's the reason that a lot of Spaniards, including this one behind the camera, put sugar in their coffee. Let me show you.
Sorry, but I'm not really sorry. It needs it.
So do you want to know why? Well, let me tell you a story. And the first stop, a traditional Spanish supermarket. Let's go. Okay, we're going to film this on the iPhone because supermarkets tend to get a little bit weird about big cameras with microphones on the top. So when I first arrived in Spain in 2011 and I wanted to buy coffee, I would go into the supermarket and I would buy coffee. I would see all the rows of coffee. I didn't really know what I was choosing. There was a word I kept seeing and it was this one, mezcla. It means mix or blend. I didn't really think much more of it, but I would take my mezcla coffee home. I would make coffee and it would be disgusting. It would be burnt and bitter and well, it was just something really wrong. So I didn't really understand why. But one day I came back to the supermarket. I was like, I need to find out a little more. It's like that word mezcla, blend, mix. What is going on here? And so I flipped the coffee packet round and read a little closer and I saw this other word, torrefacto. Often it would say 50% torrefacto, 50% natural, or 75%, 25% torrefacto. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew that word torrefacto was the key here. I needed to understand what that word meant. That was why this coffee tasted weird. So let's go home, let's make some coffee, and I'm going to tell you guys all about torrefacto. That's the second time we've successfully infiltrated a supermarket, so not bad, Yoli.
We're pretty good at it, yeah?
All right, let's make some coffee. So guys, what is torrefacto, this kind of fascinating, long, and slightly confusing word? What I discovered all those years ago when I started investigating it, it's a process of effectively burning about 15% sugar onto the coffee when you roast it. And what it does is that caramelized sugar forms this kind of burnt film around the coffee bean. So this stuff that I've got here is 100% torrefacto, 85% coffee, 15% sugar, and look how dark it is. It's a really, really dark color. And what that does to the flavor, it makes the flavor of that coffee much more bitter, astringent, but also gives the impression of it being stronger. Over here, I have the natural stuff, which is the normal kind of brown color of coffee. And so yeah, just looks like normal coffee. So what the torrefacto process does is it actually masks the true aroma and flavor of good coffee. Now, this is 100% torrefacto. You won't usually get that in the bars. I've had that before, I suspect, in the odd bar, and it may depend on the region in Spain, I'm not quite sure. And I don't think you'll see it as much anymore. But if you go into a traditional bar, particularly in Madrid, you're probably going to get coffee that's maybe 70% natural, 30% torrefacto. They literally mix it. If you're buying at the supermarket, if you buy mezcla, you'll see it's a 50-50 mix. So 50% natural, 50% torrefacto. That's a pretty nipple hardening mix if you ask me. I'm going to go and make some coffee. I'm going to make some 100% torrefacto coffee and some natural, and then Yoli and I are going to sit down and taste it. Not a blind tasting, but the torrefacto might make us blind. It's torrefacto tasting time. And I've of course invited here Yoli because she is
A super taster.
a super taster, the super taster. Here we have 100% torrefacto. You can see the dark beans here. And then we have natural here. This is normal roasted coffee. This is Arabica. We don't know what type of beans this is because they don't tell you. Made under scientific conditions, our kitchen.
Always.
Having your normal coffee. Feel like some coffee, normal coffee.
Poker face. No sugar, of course.
No sugar, of course.
I always put sugar in my coffee, even if it's natural.
Because Yoli is the torrefacto generation. Let's go nuclear.
Bomb.
Yeah, it's like nuclear fission. A little watery actually. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
You distill the burnt rubber tire smoke down into a liquid and you drink it. So what's interesting is, like I said, this was a little watery, but this, I think I put the same amount of water in, but it just tastes so much more intense, and that's, you know, what torrefacto does. Pays havoc on your stomach.
But it also gets far from being coffee, actually. It starts, tasting of something else.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, this is coffee because I've been told that this is coffee. But it could be something else.
Could be something else.
Yeah, it could be tar distilled.
Yeah. So obviously you're thinking, why does this exist in Spain? Well, it has to do with history, one of our favorite topics. So we're going to head to the center of Madrid and give you a history lesson in why Spanish coffee is so bizarre. So Spain's first torrefactor, or in other words, the first person to bring the torrefacto process to Spain, was a guy called José Gómez Tejedor. Now, he was the founder of Cafés La Estrella. This is a big Spanish coffee company that still exists today. Now, he was around in the early 20th century, and he went on a coffee finding trip to Mexico, and there he saw something interesting. He saw that Mexican miners were roasting sugar onto their coffee beans so that when they took them down into the mine, the beans would last longer without going rancid, because obviously the miners were down there for quite a while. Effectively, this process they were doing is a way of preserving their coffee beans. So Jose realized that this miner's trick was a boon for his coffee business back home in Spain, because it would enable him to distribute his coffee more widely throughout Spain, where transport was pretty slow back then, without the coffee going off. But torrefacto really took off in 1940 Spain after the Spanish Civil War. That was a period that was marked by poverty and scarcity. So here's the thing, if you haven't got much coffee, which there wasn't back then, or it's not great quality, you use the torrefacto process to hide that and deal with that scarcity and that quality issue. You see, because torrefacto makes coffee taste more intense and look darker and just be bigger and bolder. So if you haven't got as much coffee, you won't notice it as much. And the other thing is, when that coffee tastes much more intense, it means you can mix in non-coffee substitutes within the coffee, like chicory and things like that, and people just won't notice. So that all made sense in the context of 1940s, 1950s Spain, but why are we still drinking torrefacto coffee today in Spain? So here we are in Toma Café. Now, these guys opened in 2011 and were really the pioneers of bringing great coffee to Madrid. Nowadays, it's a lot easier to get, 100% Arabica, really great coffee that doesn't have torrefacto applied. But back when these guys started, I remember coming here about 8 years ago, and it was a big deal. So yeah, it's getting a little easier. But why is torrefacto still a thing in Spain? Well, there's a few reasons. Number one, some people just really like the flavor of torrefacto. Maybe it reminds them of growing up, or it reminds them of home. Cafés La Estrella, I remember reading a quote somewhere saying that they still have, a market for torrefacto coffee. There's still a taste for it. But number two is an interesting one. And I remember Santi, who's the founder of Toma Café here, telling me a number of years ago that torrefacto still exists kind of for the same reason that was first started. So if it first started as a way to bulk up coffee with sugar, well, that kind of still exists as a reason, because if you're putting sugar in coffee, sugar is cheaper, so you're actually lowering the cost of the coffee. So in a way, what it does is torrefacto lowers the coffee company's costs. Another third reason is interesting, and a parallel issue affecting the quality of Spanish coffee is that a lot of it contains cheaper, more astringent Robusta beans, which are the antithesis of Arabica, the really good quality, robust, kind of delicious coffee that you know. You see, if you're gonna doctor coffee a little bit, it doesn't really matter what the quality of the original coffee was like. So when you're going into a cafe, often you're drinking coffee that's made from this cheaper and just not as nice Robusta coffee beans. So a key tip is, when you go into the supermarket, you're buying coffee, look for 100% Arabica, because if you don't see that, that means that it's probably going to be all Robusta, the cheaper stuff, or maybe at least a blend of that with Arabica. I once sent an email to a big coffee company here, Cafés Marcia, and asked them what blend their coffee was. How much is Robusta, how much is Arabica? And they emailed me back and said that they wouldn't tell me. They said that under current coffee labeling laws in Spain, it wasn't necessary to reveal that mix. So, you know, obviously it wasn't 100% Arabica because they would have said that. So make sure you're looking for that when you go and buy your coffee. Much better, much better. Actually tastes like coffee and not sort of burnt coffee. You're not going to want to put sugar in this stuff, Yoli, I'm sorry.
I hope not.
Cheers. So guys, if you want to drink great coffee while you're in Madrid, I'm going to put the names of some great coffee places in the description below. And remember, if you're ever in a tight torrefacto corner and you've got nowhere to go and you've got to drink torrefacto coffee, reach for the sugar. It's always there. You can even reach for 2. So happy coffee drinking, and we'll see you in the next video. Ciao.